This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or domain, check out squarespace.com. Do you have a dream, or do you want to live your dream?
Where do you go to fulfill your lifelong ambition to photograph bison and wolves in the snow? Welcome to Yellowstone.
Yellowstone National Park. This amazing place has been on my bucket list for wildlife photography ever since I got into it, especially to photograph bison and wolves, which I don't have where I live in eastern Canada. And there was no doubt in my mind that winter was the time to go. Snowy conditions to get the weather and environment as part of my photos was high on my list. This would really reveal what a good wildlife photo should. It should be about things, not of things. But this was more than an item off my to-do list. It was to uncover the secrets and stories that my telephoto lens and camera could record and capture, to freeze it in time in an ecosystem that's constantly, even if slowly, evolving. My trip there was like stepping into another world, just waiting to be discovered, the stuff dreams are made of. So I flew down to Bozeman, Montana, then off to the west entrance of the park in West Yellowstone. While most of the park is in Wyoming, it also reaches out to Idaho and Montana. The first few days would be by snow coach, the only way to get around for photography this time of year in that part of the park. Up north later in the trip in the Lamar Valley, you can still drive some of the roads, so roadside encounters were what we were looking for there. Yellowstone is an amazing place. The first ever national park created and huge at over 2 million acres. It's a caldera visible from space that hides a supervolcano underneath. Telltale signs of its sleeping power are the geysers and hot water reservoirs that are still active today. The most famous geyser, Old Faithful, was worth seeing, even if I'm here for wildlife. And no, the wildlife enjoy the warmth created by the geothermal activity, but they don't drink the water near the geysers and pools, being high in dissolved minerals that can be dangerous. But the geothermal activity created and the minerals in the water do keep rivers flowing in winter where others might be frozen. But while I enjoyed the majesty of the mountains and valleys, I was there to do some wildlife photography. I brought my big lens, my Canon 600mm f4, as well as a camera that Canon lent me for the trip, the newly released Canon R5 Mark II, to put it through its paces in the field and in a harsh environment. Being a Canon ambassador has a few perks that come in handy. The deep snow during my trip created difficult conditions, especially in the second half of my trip farther north. Adding to the already challenging fight for life, wildlife there was clearly having to work harder to get around and look for food. It was hard work for the photographer too, and getting a unique angle for photos by getting off the road was a challenge.
Hey everyone, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one solution where you can create your own website and have your own domain name. And it looks really professional. I created my own website from scratch. You don't need any experience in programming or coding, and it's really easy. Squarespace has lots of templates for different genres like photography, which is mine, But the place to go these days is the new design intelligence feature, using Squarespace's experience and cutting-edge AI to help you customize and curate your own build to your own specific needs. Squarespace also has great features to monetize your work, like selling through an online store and taking payments from all over the world using credit cards, PayPal, and even buy now and pay later using Afterpay. You can even offer free downloads for people to sign up for your email list like I do, a great way to build engagement. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Simon for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Bison are built for extreme temperatures and deep snow. They don't even flinch at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Their dense coats and layers of fat can keep them warm during the coldest weather, and they use their big heads as snow plows by moving them back and forth to clear the snow, exposing their favorite winter food, the grasses that lie beneath. But winter hasn't been the bison's only enemy. The move westward to conquer the continent included hunting the bison from populations that would range from 30 to 60 million, down to 541 individuals by 1889. The Yellowstone herd was down to 25, hidden in a deep valley. But now they're making a remarkable comeback, and the Yellowstone herd includes as many as 6,000. But finding food includes moving around in the deep snow, and sometimes even blocking my path home.
Now this ended up being a bit more interesting than I planned. We came up here to photograph a bison, and then the bison decided to go into the trail and block the way home. So we're gonna wait here as long as it takes, I guess.
One of the most interesting sightings I had during my trip was this mule deer doe. We found her in a creek by the road, cold and with what appeared to be blood on her head. We also noticed several coyotes patrolling and observing her. We didn't know what had happened to her, but the behavior of staying in the river for hours, moving back and forth, seemed unusual and to spell trouble for her survival. We left there that night, expecting to come back the next day to find that she'd perished. But to our surprise, she was still there, active and eating grasses from the riverbank. These animals have a resilience that astounds and a will to survive that transcends hardship. Yellowstone has plenty of other hoofed mammals, and I was lucky enough to find and photograph several species. Elk were there in large numbers, often hanging around rocky outcrops. Bighorn sheep were also around, though in smaller numbers and harder to find. These ewes were in a great position for photos at eye level, and while these bighorn rams were up high, they showed off where they often live, where there's both food and protection from predators. There were also moose and pronghorn in the park, though in fewer numbers, but I was still happy to spot a few. And while Yellowstone is famous for mammals, I love photographing birds. There were many species that I've photographed before, like bald eagles that were especially pretty in the snow, and others like belted kingfishers, mallard ducks, as well as ravens and magpies, the cleanup crew for the predators in the park. Seeing golden eagles was a real treat, as I've only seen them once back home. This one was overseeing a predator kill and gave me the pleasure of a few flybys and posed on a treetop with some snow for some great shots. But while most people love larger birds or birds of prey, my favorites were ones that I've never photographed before, the amazing American dipper. In Yellowstone, this bird forages underwater in streams and has amazing adaptations like an inner nictitating membrane over its eyes to see underwater, as well as flaps that close off its nostrils when submerged. I even got footage of one swimming to keep up with the current, which was great to watch. And last but not least, on my list to photograph were the predators, a critical part of life in the park. The grizzly bears are dormant or hibernating this time of year, but the three members of the Canidae, or dog family that live there, the fox, coyote, and wolf, were all present and active. The fox species here, the red fox, is a shy but sometimes curious creature. I had several encounters with them, including a few at close range as they curiously checked up on me. This one had been looking in the snow for food, and the bit of snow on its nose made for great photos. This one sleeping was quite far away for a tight portrait, but the best part of this scene was the undulating humps of snow, which are what really made the photo. Coyotes are also an important part of predation in the park. They primarily eat voles, mice, and other small animals like rabbits. During the season for calving of elk is its best time of the year for hunting larger prey, as yearling births provide easier opportunities. But the most famous of the predators of Yellowstone are the wolves. For years seen as pests that fed on livestock, they were hunted as part of predator control programs to extinction in Yellowstone by 1926. But there was a serious impact to the ecosystem of the park due to the absence of wolves. Elk populations ballooned and led to overgrazing, impacting the health of the park. Further work and research led to the concept that ecosystems need keystone species, animals that play a critical role in maintaining a healthy biomass, diversity of species, and productivity. This led to the eventual reintroduction of wolves to the park in 1995. 14 individuals captured from Alberta, Canada, and relocated. In 1996, 17 more were added. And the highlight of the trip for me was being able to witness this firsthand. Currently, there are about 125 wolves in the park, made up of 12 packs. The largest is the Wapiti pack, and one morning I was able to see this pack feeding on the spoils of a successful hunt on an adult and juvenile bison. This plays an important role in controlling populations of bison in the park, as well as providing food for various scavengers in the park, including ravens, eagles, wolverines, and coyotes. Their behavior was interesting to watch. Going back to the kill over and over allowed us to see them up close for several hours, and I was reminded by my guides that I was witnessing something special and rarely seen. Getting a close-up of a black wolf in the white snow made for a particularly dramatic shot. I also noted that some of the wolves have tracking collars, which researchers use to track their whereabouts. I feel blessed to have witnessed the amazing diversity of wildlife that Yellowstone National Park provides in winter, and hope that you too can experience its awesome power someday so it can tell you its story firsthand.